In Memphis, Wells inspired African Americans to pack up, and this caused the white-owned streetcar system to lose large sums of money because ridership was low. Two City Railroad Company representatives visited Wells in her office and asked her for help at getting African Americans to ride. Wells refused.
Her press was destroyed and a threat was on her life to return back to Memphis. So African American women came to her aid in terms of helping her to stay in Philadelphia, New York. T. Thomas Fortune came to her aid by giving her a job with the New York Age. One of the things that she said was, or to raise the question, was it really bound around rape or was it about economics? And when she begins to question the fact that whites want to keep blacks economically bound, she becomes a victim of racism herself. And as she begins to go around the country speaking about it, it got to the point where she could not come home. And as she went abroad to talk about lynching, it got to the point whereby even white journalists in America organized a campaign against her to tell particularly audiences in Europe that what she was saying was a lie, that black folks at home lynched, they stole, they raped, etc. So lynching was a necessity.
Although Wells was not covered by the white papers in the North, she pressed ahead, and more invitations to speak followed. Her persistence paid off. In 1893, Wells was invited to England through contacts she'd made at speaking engagements. She spent April and May there, her first trip abroad. Wells received large levels of support. Speaking invitations flowed in, more than she could accept. Before her visit, many influential people told her they thought the negative reports about African Americans were true. A wide range of English religious leaders showed evidence of their support by signing resolutions that strongly condemned American lynching.
Later that year in July, she joined forces with Frederick Douglass and Ferdinand Barnett to challenge the exclusion of African Americans at the World Columbian Exposition in Chicago. The affair promoted cultures of the world. Wells produced and distributed several thousand pamphlets that reported that racism is why African Americans were being excluded. Only the nationally acclaimed Frederick Douglass was admitted because Haiti wanted him to be a part of their program. He invited a then struggling poet named Paul Laurence Dunbar to be his guest. At the time, Dunbar was an elevator boy. Dunbar didn't know that nationally famous journalist William Dean Howells of the Atlantic Monthly in Boston was there and had read a copy of his poetry. Howells liked his work and printed it in his publication. This proved to be Dunbar's springboard to national fame. African Americans excelled in other fields too, overcoming extraordinary obstacles. In medicine, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams received worldwide recognition in 1893 for being the first person to successfully perform open heart surgery.
Wells returned to England in 1894 to draw more attention to the struggle. She stayed focused and garnered endorsements from leading political figures and religious groups. And by writing about her experiences abroad as a correspondent for the Inter-Ocean newspaper in Chicago, she further promoted the cause. Wells made the decision to move to Chicago primarily because of a romantic interest in Ferdinand L. Barnett. They married June 27, 1895.
Wells married an attorney who became one of the city attorneys due to an appointment that Booker T. Washington made for him, Ferdinand Barnett. And when he became an attorney, people assumed that she would stay at home with her children, etc. Instead, she went from convention to convention, carrying her children with her, and matter of fact, nursing her children at the convention. She was able to balance, as many African American women of this period, motherhood, being a wife, as well as being an activist.
In 1895, Wells was in the national headlines again for her 3-year study on lynching, compiled in 1892, 93, and 94. Called the Red Record, it documented the lynching history that clearly showed African Americans were principal victims. The study cited that in 1894, 132 persons were executed by due process of law, but 197 persons were murdered by mobs without an opportunity for a defense. Some of these victims were white, but the majority were African Americans.
they were committed to, in fact, doing whatever they had to do by any means necessary to keep blacks in a state of dependence on the white community. What we also see is that Lincoln was really not committed to total equality of black people, as he was to often say that if he would have not had to free a single slave and end the war, he would have done that. But after he was assassinated, these radical elements in Congress felt that they should in fact take control of Reconstruction. Polling places are moved indiscriminately. Blacks are not told when they go to the polling places to exercise their franchise. They are met with guns, they are met with other threats on their families, their homes are burned. So blacks really were frightened and really intimidated by these means that whites used to, in fact, suppress them.
When she and William Monroe Trotter went to see Woodrow Wilson in 1913, the newly elected president, wanting to get the issue of injustice and especially lynching an issue on his progressive agenda. And a major confrontation broke out, and they were asked to leave, and he was very upset with the meeting.
Wells said the president claimed he wasn't aware there was segregation and told them that if they wanted to meet again, don't bring Trotter. The Associated Press News Service found out about this and sent news across the country that Trotter insulted President Wilson. African American papers copied them and knocked his actions too. The burning issue of race engulfed the nation even in the midst of World War I in 1917. While African American soldiers were fighting and dying throughout Europe for America, they were denied basic rights at home. Across the country, the race faced racial violence in the North and the South.